Hey guys, new week for trading gold. So I wanted to do a video today, given that it's Monday. Basically, just going to quickly cover the key news events this week that we want to be paying attention for when it comes to trading gold. As gold traders, as I keep on talking about in my videos, especially as somebody who's primarily more of like a fundamental style trader or really trades on fundamental news and trends. Um, it's very important we understand what are going to be the key news events that are happening this week so we can prepare ourselves when trading gold or if we have certain positions open or not, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things are very important. Okay. Um, so I just want to reiterate, especially if you're a beginner, okay, I want to reiterate the fact that on investing.com, okay, so this is really where I personally go. You can also use Forex Factory. There's lots of other sources where you can get it, but you basically need to be able to find a source for your economic calendar. An economic calendar, like the one on investing.com, basically outlines all the key economic news events or data releases that are happening and affecting which currency, okay? So this is where you can literally check every single day. That's what I do pretty much every morning. One of the first things I do is I check what are kind of the key events happening on that particular day, what time, so I can prepare for the volatility and all those types of things. And then normally on the weekend or on Monday, I look at all the events happening for the next week. So I kind of have an idea of what's coming and I can understand what is the potential narrative change that could happen over the course of a given week because of the news. Okay, so let's quickly recap as well where we currently are when it comes to gold and obviously when it comes to the dollar, right? We need to be aware of both gold fundamentals and also dollar fundamentals just because, um, we're trading the pair, right? So obviously the key thing is that last week there was a huge price surge when it comes to the dollar. And there was very, very strong bullish momentum behind the dollar after Powell and the whole Fed meeting came out and basically said that they're planning to raise interest rates sooner than expected and also taper asset purchases sooner than expected. Both of these things are directly very bullish for the dollar and consequently very bearish for gold, right? If they're so-called true. However, we have to remember that these are still only hints at the possibility of raising interest rates and also tapering asset purchases, okay? Or basically decreasing the money supply, okay? Um, these these are only hints, but the reality is that we're still in a situation where the interest rates are extremely low and the Fed is still buying a lot of assets right now per month in order to help re-stimulate the economy due to the global pandemic. Okay. Another key narrative that came out of that meeting as well, we can't forget, is the fact that Powell talked about how he saw the economic recovery and the economic progression going at a good rate, despite the fact that jobs data is very mixed, despite the fact that unemployment is still very high and all of these different things. He basically outlined the fact that he believes that the economy is on the right, is basically on pace to recover at the Fed's kind of expectation. Okay, so those are the two real things that came out of the meeting last week. So what are we really looking for this week? Because more than anything, as we saw with gold, right, gold price dumped as a result of the news. I think people were expecting maybe the Fed to react to the high inflation that we'd seen the week before that, but I don't think people necessarily expected this type of statement from Powell and just from the Fed overall. Um, and consequently, um, as expected, but I think even more than maybe the Fed was thinking or something like that. Obviously, the stock market has definitely taken a bit of a hit, right? It's obviously down. And investors are certainly concerned now with this change in narrative and change in sentiment that the Fed has put out. We have to remember as well that the Fed is not interested in crashing the stock market, right? they want to make sure that the stock market is still staying strong. They want to make sure that um, yeah, people who have investments going on and also corporations and all these things aren't going to suffer as a result of them eas pulling back on certain monetary policies that they've been implementing as a result of helping the economy recover. It's not in their interest. Gold, on the other hand, okay, look, the Fed doesn't care about gold price, right? But they certainly do care about things like the stock market. They don't want to deal with a stock market crash, which will cause even further economic harm, okay? So now that we have this overall narrative set, what are the key events that we want to really look out for this week? So the first key event, and this is the most important one probably of the week, is that Powell, if we go to the calendar here, bear in mind that my times here are for Bangkok, so it's 7 hours ahead of London and about 12 hours ahead from New York, so just bear that in mind. But on Wednesday, which is Tuesday in America, at 1 a.m. in the morning, Powell is actually speaking again. He's testifying at the Senate, but he's also going to be answering questions, and it is widely expected that he will also be addressing additional, like he will be addressing in more additional detail the basically the narratives that came out of the Fed meeting last week about the raise of interest rates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, it's impossible to really predict what Powell is going to say here, but we can maybe, we can always prepare for, potential scenarios. So one scenario that could potentially come out of this is that he's going to try and make everybody calm. I think the reaction to the Fed meeting last week was definitely very strong, right? And it was clearly reflected in a lot of the markets, right? Just how gold reacted, how the stock market reacted. The reaction was much stronger, I think, than anybody could have anticipated, and maybe even the Fed, okay? And when you actually listen to the Fed's or what Powell's statement last week and his answers to the question, you realize that he was really trying he was trying very hard to make everything just seem as normal and as calm as possible. I mentioned this in the previous video that, you know, he didn't actually raise rates, right? And I think he was just trying to hint because the inflation was pretty high. But he definitely was trying to say it in a way that wasn't going to affect the stock market too much. Because again, he he doesn't want corporations to suffer, right? He wants economic recovery. So he has to be very careful about what he says. So one potential scenario is that as a result, now that we've had a few days of a few days to basically have the markets react to the Fed meeting, he may try his best actually to keep markets calm to make sure that the stock market doesn't um, react more heavily into the downside as a result of this interest rate news about the asset purchasing tapering and all these different types of things. He may really try and make sure that people understand that no, the Fed's there really just to continue keeping interest rates low, supporting the economy and all those types of things in order to basically increase investor confidence in certain markets. Okay, so that could be one potential scenario. Okay, if that really happens, we could potentially see a reversal in the actual in what we've seen over the last basically, what's it been now, maybe 4 days or so with the dollar, where we actually revert back to the original trend where we're bearish on the dollar and consequently we're more bullish on gold. If we look at the DXY right now, as I've pointed out previously, let's go to a higher time frame. Let's go to the 4 hour. Right now, we're getting very close to this 92.5 level. We almost got there, and then we kind of got rejected, but it looks like 92, we may be holding at this key level here, right? So we really want to see now is Powell, based on Powell's statement on Tuesday and him speaking, are we going to get up to that level and break further to the previous relative high of about 93.5? Or could he help really push with his words a situation where the DXY and the dollar overall, you know, basically curves back down and we continue a kind of bearish trend on the dollar, which we've had for quite some time, right? All the way since back here, right? We've been quite bearish on the dollar, at least I have been for a very, very long time, and have most investors, right? So we want to really see if he's going to try and push that kind of narrative out. On the other hand, there is a potential situation where he doubles down on what he was saying last week, that yes, the economy is recovering, and, we definitely need to look at the inflation, and we need to kind of we need to really make sure that, we're planning for these potential interest rate hikes and all these things. If he does that, it could definitely already, it could definitely cause a situation where the market, which is already clearly quite sensitive to this type of information in the current situation, could really react even further, causing further stock market pullbacks, very strong bullish gold price, and also consequently, when we start looking at gold price here, now I'm on the gold chart, where we really start pulling back down to 1750, right? And potentially lower. As we've seen based on the price action with gold over the last 3 to 4 days, has it been 3 to 4 days, or maybe it's only been like even 2 days, whatever. Basically, since the Fed meeting, 1760 has been proven pretty strong support. If we go to the hourly chart, 1760 has been proving to be pretty strong support here, where we've had the bounce off here on 1767. We got a bit lower and we bounced off again at 1760 when it really looked like we were going to break through that resistance. But I mean, based on also previous price history, we can see that 1760 is definitely a strong level, price level. So we could really be at a situation at this point where it really depends on Powell as to whether we're going to break through that and his words, or if we're going to continue kind of bouncing off that level and going back to potentially higher gold prices, right? If he pushes a narrative that's, ultimately going to help keep the market calm, kind of bites back down on the whole idea that no, we're not raising interest rates anytime soon, blah, 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 we could totally see a reversal here and pushing back past 1800, okay? Or if he doubles down on the, yes, we need to raise interest rates sooner than rather than later kind of talk, blah, 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 1760 could easily be broken at that point. So we have to be extremely aware of this speech, okay? That's going to really be the key narrative. And when you're trading, if you have positions open prior to that, make sure that you have stop losses set, or you understand what is the kind of risk that you could be facing when he's speaking, okay? Because as you saw last time, you can get wiped out really easily, okay? So that's very, very important to understand. As to what is expected that he's supposed to say, who knows? Point is, never try and predict what he's going to say and try and base trade off that. Because if you do, that's how you basically get led to get fucked in the gold market, okay? Or I highly don't recommend doing that anyway, my personal 2 cents. Okay. Finally, the second key narrative that we really want to pay attention to is also just any data which is really going to come out this week, which could also, provide support to Powell's narrative that the economy is really recovering at a rate which, or is keeping at pace to the recovery rate that he's expecting and that people are expecting. He really doubled down on the idea that the U.S. economy is really recovering at a good rate, and that everything is happening almost as expected. So the key news data that we really have for this week, which is going to kind of lend credence to that, is the GDP data, which is going to be coming out on Thursday morning in the US, or Thursday night for me, okay? Um, Now the GDP data in terms of the forecast, if we look here, is actually expected to be the same as previous. I mean, which is fine. So if we basically meet that forecast, 6.4% for GDP growth is obviously very, very strong. If we were to keep that, that would definitely lend credence to the idea that the economy is recovering at a pretty good rate. However, if we see a number which is lower than this expected forecast, then this certainly could potentially signal a couple of things. Well, one, that the economy is not actually recovering nearly as quickly as as Powell is expected, and it's just kind of almost like a fake out recovery, right? Because of all the free money that they've been giving, all of the monetary policy that they've been implementing, that's kind of creating almost a false sense of economic recovery, right? But GDP is a very strong proof of whether the economy is really coming back at a good, strong, stable rate, okay? But more importantly, if it's lower than expected, this could lead him to want to actually push a narrative further, which says, hey, we can't actually raise interest rates as soon as we expect. Okay, look at the GDP data that came out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So if it's lower than that, we could expect a potential narrative switch on that front, which would lead to a more bullish gold price, okay, bearish dollar price. So those are the two things that we really want to pay out attention to this week. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. I really believe that trading gold fundamentally is one of the best ways to do it, and therefore it's very important to pay attention to these things and understand these events. So I'm happy to answer any questions. If you like the content, please give this a like, and I'll talk to you guys later.